A Bug Fables TUFFBUGS run? Sure, how bad could it be? Yeah, this is gonna be a fun time, I can tell. Thanks to FRAMEONE, I can only super block. And with Spooder's Bite doing 4 damage unblocked, it's gonna hurt a lot. So not a great start, but maybe the official first boss will be a little easier. Unfortunately, that ended up being wishful thinking. Despite the fact that Spooder only has 31 HP, he still does more damage than average. And seeing that I'm still missing lots of blocks, that is not a recipe for success. Unable to keep up with Spooder and his underlings, and not the ceiling variant, my first attempt ended in a loss. The second attempt, all it really boiled down to was not messing up. Our blocks were much sharper, Taunt actually did something, and I didn't even need to use my magic seed. Now that we're out of the first chapter, we can buy medals and rank up. This is where RUIGEE and MOREFARM finally come into play. Though prior to now, RUIGEE got us lots of berries from battling enemies in Snakemouth Den. MOREFARM though just means you have to grind more berries to level up more. Just throwing this out there, but if there was any part of TUFFBUGS I could change, it'd be to take this menu code out. But no matter, I know my way around the block and I know how to avoid having to grind for too long. I.e., I made a berry grinding video, you can check that out later after this video is over. Our next battle of note is a Wasp Trooper. Real talk, whenever I say Wasp, I feel like I have a lisp. Like, is there a word out there as hard to pronounce as Wasp? Maybe 6. But who cares about that? I got a spicy berry earlier before we ended up going back into the Ant Kingdom, and using it on V and able to use a Tornado Toss here. By the time she fell, I used Kabbu to finish off the Wasp Trooper and rescue Leif. Now as you'll see here, I was only ranked 2 going into the fight with the Wasp Trooper. Take my word for it, you don't need to be at a very high rank to win in this challenge. Just wait until we get into the really good medals in this game. Speaking of which, when we first made it to Golden Settlement, I took on the Golden Settlement Technician's Trouble because I wanted a Super Block Plus. After all, in this challenge, you can't normal block, so why the heck not? Our next target is Arya. This being a 2-on-1, we can't do very much damage to this girl. And be real with me, the razor grass she summons from underground is annoying to try and super block. Despite these disadvantages though, I won this in my first attempt. You may be wondering why I chose to use Leif in this battle and not V. You see, when Arya's HP falls low enough, she will summon a Venus Bud to fight alongside her. Venus Buds, in short, are terrifying to fight because of their ability to put you to sleep. And since TUFFBUGS forces you to super block, that means you are very much liable to missing even just one block and being completely stuck. Unfortunately, my TP was pretty low at one point, and so I had to super block all 3 hits of her spores. And trust me, I really did not want to have to do that. We pretty much only barely survived thanks to the magic seed I kept from Snakemouth Den too. Now earlier in this video, I mentioned that I did not really need to rank up very much. However, if there was a fight that existed where I wish I did rank up more, it would definitely be here with Zasp and Mothiva. Heck, at the time, I didn't even know that it was a problem for me until I realized that after I finished this fight, I forgot about back support. Because it's beyond ridiculous just how much damage that Zasp can do to you if you attack Mothiva at all. And as much as I love Favorite One, when it's your only medal to increase attack and you don't have a lot of HP going around, it's not really going to help you very much. At least not when you're so reliant on freeze working for you. And since we don't have Bubble Shield or Shock Trooper yet, I was actually relying on Heavy Sleeper to give Kabbu the defense to tough it out. And to put it mildly, success was limited. I almost won my second attempt, but you cannot afford to miss a single block when you have this low HP. And keep in mind, this is damage with Super Block Plus equipped. Heck, my third attempt where I actually managed to win, I really did not deserve to. There, V got knocked out prematurely early, and the only reason I managed to win was not because of my skill, but in spite of it. The turn before I knocked out Mothiva, she used her song to buff Zasp defense, and Zasp used a freaking spicy berry to buff himself, so I had one turn where they did not attack at all. And it's only there I managed to freeze with Leif's Icefall, because if Zasp gets frozen and Mothiva gets knocked out that same turn, he doesn't get the permanent +1 attack bonus. And what happens after that blunder is what I can describe purely as Zasp having pity on me. I mean, don't get me wrong, he still beat both Kabbu and Leif within an inch of their lives. But still, we barely managed to win this fight. Can I say I'm happy with this result? I mean, I guess, but I really don't feel very good about this. Like, this luck was not even hype, it just felt like I was playing badly and the game rewarded me for it. Like, at least give me the satisfaction of feeling like I managed to win on my own merits. Well, let's try Venus Guardian, why not? This is the most miserable thing I've ever experienced. I can't do this, we're turning off hard mode. Compared to Zasp and Mothiva, Venus Guardian is a much more honest boss. My game plan mainly revolved around having Kabbu be in the back, redirect attacks from everyone else, and then sponge those hits while asleep so the heavy sleeper can take effect. Of course, sleepiness to come from Venus Buds is not appreciated. And AoE moves that hit everyone like the hard seas can be absolutely lethal. Henceforth, why I need to taunt. Now, someone in my stream chat wanted to see me finish off the Venus Guardian using a hard seed, but Venus raised her Guardian's defense, so that's not gonna happen. And well, I'd complain, but this guy doesn't really deserve it anyway, so I really don't care. But hey, love you, monk. And through gaining Venus's blessing, we have finally finished Chapter 2. And so predictably, the game gets a lot harder from this point forward. Or so you'd think. So what is there to say about Chapter 3? It holds, in my opinion, the hardest boss in the game, gives every boss and enemy +1 attack, and has the Bandit and Wasp ambush. Having such low HP, being hit by multiple enemies in a single turn, and some enemies even hitting everyone in a single hit, it's no surprise that this fight is problematic. But that's not my problem with this fight. No, I can take having my butt handed to me, because after all, I have to learn how to play well. What I do have a problem with, however, are having glitches that make my meadows work properly. The game plan here was to make sure that Kabbu could survive getting attacked by the Bandits and Wasp, because both Leif and V get powered up thanks to Favorite One. And you can see plainly here that Kabbu does have that medal equipped. But then the very next turn, as V is woken up and Kabbu gets knocked out, nothing happens. Now, I can't tell you why the medal did not activate, but I can tell you it made me lose the fight, and I ended up losing more and more and more after that. But yeah, for all intents and purposes, I guess Kabbu just is not worth that much to V after all. Some friend she turned out to be, huh? No wonder she has such bad blood with her sister. Well, someone will have to do the research, I guess it'll be me. No matter, I did end up winning this fight. It wasn't easy, especially only being level 2, but we in fact did win. Though I will say it left a bad taste in my mouth. Now, depending on your level of experience with Bug Fables, you'll either find TUFFBUGS one of the hardest challenges you'll ever attempt, or overhyped much more than it had any right to be. After this point in Chapter 3, I find myself on the latter side. Lots of quests become available, and they have some very, very strong rewards. Leif's Bubble Shield Light is online, and the Underground Tavern is available to you. But before we can go there, we have to fight Monsieur Scarlet. Prior to this fight, I made a lot of crispy donuts. Kabbu would taunt, Leif would keep attacking, then Bubble Shield Kabbu to keep him safe, maybe occasionally using items to restore my TP, and when V hits max charge, she uses Tornado Toss. By no means was it exciting, but my game plan was at least effective. And just saying, it's not going to change very much from this point forward. Earlier, I stocked up on a bunch of Agaric Shrooms, because I'm going to need a lot of these items for B33, the boss of Chapter 3. Ordinarily, this boss is a massive difficulty spike, and on hardest mode, or TUFFBUGS for this matter, it gets a +2 attack by default. And that's not even factoring in either the attack up bonus it gets once it reaches phase 2, or when it's using its charge attack. And you're trapped in the honey factory until after you beat this boss. So if you couldn't quite tell, I don't have a very high opinion of this boss, and even if you think the way I'm playing is cheap, understand that I was only barely able to survive on my first attempt with all these items. I'm not even trying to show off, this was just essential to stay alive. This was also true for a Honey Nation. As you can see, these are the medals I went in with, and then this is the damage I took from just one charge attack, with a super block. I cannot fathom any other way you'd logically try doing either of these battles. They just hit way too hard. And truth be told, that's just a big problem I have with hardest mode in general. The difficulty from this menu code just comes from giving bosses more HP and more attack, so you take more damage, and as a result, you have to play more defensively or you get completely obliterated. If not for Favorite One and Shock Trooper, this run would be so much more tedious. On the upside, I already have plenty of experience playing through this game without a lot of medal points. Earlier this year, I did a TP only run on hardest mode, which means for the entire challenge I only had 5 medal points, enough for Shock Trooper and Favorite One. However, in that challenge video, I also glossed over a lot of bosses, and I figured, you know what, let's talk about all of the bosses in this run, just so you see I'm not lying. So here's an interesting thing I learned about hardest mode. The attack up bonus after you finish Chapter 2 is applied immediately after you beat the Venus Guardian. However, the extra 1 point of defense for all bosses is only applied after you officially begin Chapter 4 by meeting it with Elza II. Which means that by fighting Mother Chomper before that, she still only has 1 defense. And the fight itself overall, well, see for yourself. Listen, in my opinion, Mother Chomper is the absolute easiest boss in the game. If only because by the time you have access to her, you have all the tools necessary to completely shut her down. Every attack either she or her chompers can use only can target a single character. So thanks to Taunt and Shock Trooper or Bubble Shield Light, she can't do anything to you. Heck, if Kabbu's taunting and he's not in the front, Mother Chomper can't use her bite either. After all, she can only bite the character who's in front, and Taunt forces focus on Kabbu. Also, since she has a natural point of defense already, having Kabbu equipped with Deep Taunt allows you to reduce her defense every turn so that V's Hurricane Toss does even more damage. Not gonna sugarcoat it, this boss is a complete joke. Only after beating Mother Chomper though do I activate Chapter 4. Now every enemy, mini-boss, and boss has an additional point of defense. Now, you'd think this would make fights take longer because enemies are going to take hits better. In reality, however, it doesn't make fights take any longer at all. In fact, if an enemy or boss has 0 defense normally, that means having 1 defense actually works against them. So after a few rounds of spy cards and then some reconciliation with V and her sister, allow me to demonstrate on Broodmother. Because she has 0 attacks that can hit multiple targets at once, both Broodmother and her midgets can be forced to only ever attack Kabbu, meaning V gets free reign to slaughter her with her Hurricane Toss, and the combination of Agaric Shrooms, Shock Trooper, and Favorite One leaves us completely safe. And as an added bonus, Chompy does 4 damage on the hardest mode, not just 3. So you see, no matter how you slice it, there really is no disadvantage to being on hardest mode right now. Of course, different bosses offer different trials and tribulations, and this is where Astrolabe comes in, and he's probably the hardest fight in the game. Items are forbidden, and with our stats being as low as they are, we have to use our TP extremely sparingly. And so there really is no reason not to give V Berserker. Combined with Strong Start and Antlion Jaws, she does a lot of damage in very little time. This leaves Kabbu on redirection duty. He taunts, and with both 2 Super Block Plus medals as well as Spiky Bod, he actually has the potential to do a lot more damage than V can in 1 turn. The only real drawback is if I don't Super Block, the damage that Kabbu takes is just immense. Meanwhile, Leif exists both to restore TP with meditation and as a last resort. If I can't Super Block with Kabbu, then I have no choice but to use Bubble Shield Light on V. And thanks to Miracle Matter, just being able to hold up for a couple of turns will be enough to get back into the fight. It's not every day that I use Frigid Confident to gamble some extra time either. Just make sure you go into this fight with max stats, otherwise you are going to have to play nearly perfectly to win. And then there was Dune Scorpion. I only had 1 death here, and it was due to not knowing how much damage the boulder would do to V. Seeing her health drop from 7 all the way to 0 told me that yeah, keeping her in the front would not work. So then I thought, alright, I'll put her in the back for back support to activate. But then get this. Then the second attempt, Dune Scorpion did not once ever go for the boulder toss attack. And to add insult to injury, I was doing this fight with freaking Life Sealer equipped. Gee, thanks for being a waste of my time. Pop quiz. Which of these bosses are we going to fight next? Wait, you thought you actually had time? If you chose Devourer, you are correct. You just won an all-expenses-paid trip inside a pitcher plant. But seriously, folks, I made a bunch of shot candies and then went to fight Devourer. So there are 3 ways to fight Devourer. Treating it like any other boss fight and playing reactively, brute forcing the fight and trying to win as fast as possible, or what I like to dub the solo run style. The gist of this game plan is simply to have 1 bug of Shock Trooper and a bunch of shot candies. This bug right here is your backbone. No matter what Devourer or his fly traps do, they will never be able to knock you out. Another bug can be your attacker. For this case, I chose Kabbu. This is because at this point in the game, we don't have Ice Rain yet, and using Understrike can knock out both Devourer and his fly traps in 1 fell swoop. The fact that Understrike ignores all defense also does not hurt. And that just leaves the last bug, in this case being Leif, to be the one to do a lot of damage before he goes down. Every turn devolved into spamming Understrike when I had Kabbu alive, and then just having V keep shocking herself so that she doesn't get hurt. Any extra damage that Princess can do is just extra. Now what makes this strategy so effective is that you are guaranteed to never have to worry about Devourer trapping you in its mouth. None of your bugs can be trapped if it would end the battle right there, like if it's your last active bug to fight with. This takes effect even if Devourer slams his head into the ground, knocking out multiple bugs in the process. It's an unfair and unruly strategy, but it gets the job done, and that's all I care about. In this session of gameplay, I went from beating Astrolabe to beating Devourer. And in between all of that, I was also grinding a bunch of berries to use for later too. Thanks to RUIGEE, you get a lot of berries from fighting enemies. And with hard hits equipped, it makes MOREFARM not so bad to deal with either. Then I went to pick up some medals from HB, you know, Detector and I think Spy Specs. And back to the bosses, we have the Watcher. By now in our adventure, we have tons of way of increasing our attack stat. Last attack, favorite one, power exchange, there's just so many ways to hurt people now. And since the Watcher normally has 0 defense, that means him having 1 defense point and then it being reduced to 0 makes V's Hurricane Toss even more devastating. It should also go without saying that we were getting a lot of mileage out of using Shock Trooper and favorite one here too. If the Watcher was a horse, this steed would be my purpose of choice for kicking. This opens up the way to get Ice Rain, and now for those of you just listening to this video but maybe have it open in a different tab, I just want to share that I have a Discord server that's available to the public to join. We talk a lot about video games, cringy comments we see on YouTube elsewhere, YouTube's terrible business decisions, just about anything you would ever want really. The link's in the description. Now back to the gameplay, we fight Seedling King next. I wanted to start this fight with V in danger so she only has 4 HP left. Once again, Kabbu's on redirection duty, and here it's extremely important that he is because Seedling King's hard C's will lower your attack by 1 stage. And since these fights don't take very long, that may as well be for the entire fight. V would then proceed to just slam the Seedling King as hard as she possibly could, and I had Leif on item duty. Since in phase 1, Seedling King has absolutely no way of hitting you directly, he's pretty much harmless right now. Going into phase 2, allow me to tell you right now that I equipped hard hits for this fight. This is because I have a few self-freezing items to activate Frostbite, which is also equipped to Kabbu. And basically, I was just counting on the luck in the Seedling King attacking Kabbu and only Kabbu directly. The boss's front summon was a regular Seedling, so Chomper had no problem one-shotting it. What then happens is that Seedling King directly attacks Kabbu and only Kabbu, dashing right into him, and he gets frozen by Frostbite. I then have some fun with some Hurricane Tosses, maybe a Frigid Coffin. We're chilling, this boss can't do anything at all right now, and the rest is just history. This was an absolute freaking cakewalk. You probably already saw this coming, but some generic NPCs are not going to be a threat to us either. It just cannot be understated how not having any AoE attacks makes you so vulnerable to the strategy of using Bubble Shield Light, Shock Trooper, Agaric Shrooms, favorite one, the works. It's just such a powerful tactic. And yet other mini-bosses that don't have the severe weakness in what skills they can use to hit everyone at once have other weaknesses that can very harshly be exploited. For example, Kabbu can both taunt and can use Dash Through to hit everyone at once. What he can't do, however, is resist sleep. Yeah, fun fact, Kabbu has 0 sleep resistance. Just chuck 1 Numbio dart at him and that sucker's knocked out. First off, I went to the far grasslands to get the move Frost Relay from the Tarantula Wizard. V also has Berserker, but it's Leif that has strong start. Since we're on TUFFBUGS and that means Cali has a point of defense, I have to drop Cali's defense to 0 first before using Frost Relay, or we'll hit a point where Frost Relay will start to do 0 damage. That very next turn, while Kabbu's still asleep, we go for Frost Relay and we leave Cali at only 5 HP left. Something a lot of people don't really know is that if you miss the final hit of Frost Relay, the 11th or 12th hit would actually do more damage if you missed the final action command. One more attack from V to KO Cali and we win. And yeah, this fight is pretty much solved. Now, I know that we've been dominating this challenge ever since we beat Chapter 3's Defiant Root, but don't be misled. If I let my guard down, I will be very vulnerable and this game will absolutely crush me. But you know the saying, when the going gets tough, tough gets the bugs. And I'd say we'd have to get really tough to beat the beast, but we really don't need to be. Aside from like 2 times the beast tried to charge up, and only 1 time it actually attacked while charged up, nothing really happened aside from it trying to poke me and bite me. It was really underwhelming, but I did have one way of making this a little more interesting. And that's through having Leif freeze himself while Frostbite's equipped, taking the 99 damage bite, and then dealing 102 damage in recoil. I mean, I could try to super block 2 times in a row after having both Leif and V get knocked out, but I've already done that on TP only hardest, and I'd rather not do that again. It's not really a very fun feeling to lose a whole fight, because you missed a few blocks at the very end of it all. And so I took my Mozzarella to go, and I left the beast to decompose. And you're probably thinking, okay, how much more can Aaron really use Frostbite? Every single one of his attacks is direct, aside from when he puts bombs on the ground. Have Kabbu taunt, give him Frostbite, maybe put on hard hits, and keep feeding him honey ice cream or frost pies instead of using anything else, and you'll soon find out just how helpless a boss can be when it only has direct attacks. The only real annoyance, and this isn't even a real problem that we have to deal with, it just makes the fight take a little bit longer, is that he can also leave the ink status after he attacks you. All you have to do is wait it out. Don't attack Riz at all. Let him thaw out, let Kabbu's ink status wear off too, then rinse and repeat the process of taunting, feeding Kabbu honey ice cream, and then just continue until Leif is at a low enough HP where you can KO him with conventional attacks. As for the bombs, just put any bug not named Kabbu on top of them and have Leif Bubble Shield Life to protect them. Guaranteed, you should have absolutely no problem fighting this boss ever again. Now, after the bosses in Chapter 5, I think the game was finally catching on that this was not really a very difficult run. Now is where my luck starts to sour a bit. The next big baddie I fight is the bounty boss Tidal Worm. At this point in the game, my literal only focus was just on smashing bosses as hard and fast as possible. And with my metal setup, you can see that the damage I was doing was just immense. Unfortunately, bosses also started using area of effect attacks much more consistently. And so even with poison attackers, favorite one, power exchange, and last attack, I wasn't able to beat Tidal Worm fast enough before he used 2 AoE attacks and knocked out both Leif and V. Well, this sucks, but I'm not going to really lose this fight. After all, I got plenty of defensive options on me still. Kabbu still has Pep Talk, and I can revive Leif to use Bubble Shield Light on other characters too. But still, all it takes is a single Bubble Jet, and I end up losing either Leif or V, or even both if none of them have high enough HP. In short, this boss really wanted me to take my sweet time. Seriously, across this entire fight, the Tidal Worm used the Bubble Jet 5 freaking times. You don't think that's enough?
Oh, that's an exasperation.
Exaggeration! Read a book, would ya?
No.
I have the streams to prove it, you know. Decided to try Carmina next, and we didn't really have any bad luck this time around. As you can plainly see, the damage that V can get off is absolutely nuclear. And we're just at a point where we can beat bosses in as early as maybe 3 or 4 turns, as long as we don't have any really bad luck that gets V knocked out early. Speaking of bad luck, there's Zamoth. After the scripted first 3 turns, you can do a ton of damage if you have V at max charge. And I was really hoping that this fight would just be another cakewalk. And while it was a cakewalk that I had to really digest. This is because Zamoth immediately summoned the Zombeetle after he was on unscripted turns. And get this, Zombeetles are regular enemies that only have AoE attacks. Between Mantisfeets and Zombeetles, I honestly prefer Mantisfeets because Zombeetles are one of the deadliest enemies you can find in the game. But again, at this point, I really did not care. I don't have Miracle Matter on either V or Leif though, so I was just forced to play the waiting game and use Chomper to attack. She only does 2 damage per bite, but it's enough to get through. Well, through the Zombeetle anyway. I had to revive V later and use her needle moves to get through Zamoth once and for all, but still, it was only thanks to Chomper we were able to survive. So be sure to thank Princess in the comments down below for being such a good girl. Then there was one more fight with Ultimax. I targeted the Wasp Bomber first, then the Driller, then Ultimax himself. There was really nothing else to mention here. V's are strong enemies, but V, she just hits so hard, especially with both Berserker and Antlion Jaws. And yeah, Kabbu took a beating, but by the time he went down, literally Ultimax was all that was left, and we still had Leif and Bubble Shield to work with too. That just leaves 2 more chapters to go, really. Now for this nasty little critter we call the Primal Weevil. Decided here, let's have some more fun with Frostbite. The first time it hit Kabbu, it did 11 damage to itself. The second time it attacked, this happened. Oh wow. That was one of the funniest things I've ever seen in this game. Next up, the Colosseum beckons us. We take a lot of damage prior to Zasp and Mothiva, but it doesn't really matter that much as long as we rely so much on Shock Trooper. Once we do reach Zasp and Mothiva, however, I try using Frostbite and it doesn't work. So I don't get to use funny Frostbite. Fortunately, however, Mothiva commits the most fatal blunder a boss could ever hope to achieve. Hurting V, but not knocking her out. Her poor Sim just got his head smashed in. And it wouldn't be the only time either because Mothiva just would keep reviving him. And guys, forgive me, I have to bully Zasp here. If I show him even the slightest bit of weakness, he's gonna bully me by taunting me. This song and dance would go on for a little while until I got myself into a position where I'm able to revive Kabbu, and Mothiva makes the mistake of reviving Zasp one last time as I'm ready to close the fight out. You see, I told you she was a diaper girl. She's so scared she can't fight me on her own. Like, take that mess into the ladies' room with you. Anyway, I used the Shock Candy in Kabbu because he becomes invincible to everything thanks to Shock Trooper, and I really need the TP for Bubble Shield and other stuff too. And something interesting I learned from this is that Bubble Shield protects you from abominations, but not Shock Trooper. This doesn't cost me anything. If anything, I only learned from this, but I never thought that Shock Trooper would be ignored by this item. That's really interesting, albeit pretty unfortunate. Just a couple more bounties to go, and they really are no threat. False Monarch only has one attack that's an area of effect move, and it's a charged attack. So you have plenty of time to bubble shield if you really needed to. Deep Taunt, Agarat Shrooms, and Shock Trooper, turn relaying the extra charge from Favor 1 to V, Hurricane Toss, it's a lot of damage, it's an utter Hemolive bath. And to add insult to injury, I was poisoned the entire time thanks to Random Start, and I had poison attackers equipped. Shh, do you hear that? What's that heavenly sound? I have to go find it. I did not even bother to heal myself after this fight. I immediately went for Peacock Spider afterwards too. And there really ain't much to say here either. We still do 25 damage every turn, even without poison or last attack medals helping us. All bounties defeated. Time to follow up with General Ultimax, and honestly, I don't know what you were expecting. Thanks to Random Start giving me +2 attack, I ended up managing to win this fight in 3 turns, and the first 2 turns were spent destroying the Ultimax tank. If you feel underwhelmed, don't worry, I do too. Which is why I believe my viewers suggested my next challenge be questless, which means that the board holding all the requests is completely off limits for the entire run. And to make things more interesting, it'll be in hardest mode too. You know what to do, I'm not going to tell you again. After all, if you don't, it's ultimately your loss. After all, I won't be able to use Favorite One in that challenge. I'm crying on the inside already. The next thing I tried to clear was the Cave of Trials before Chapter 7, but I wasn't able to succeed. I made it all the way to level 49 before I finally failed. But hey, I got a decent haul of rewards, though it would have been really nice to have gotten to fight Tangy Bug and maybe also get the team ribbon for Chompy, which, fun fact, I've never gotten to use before, so yeah, that's disappointing. My plan was giving a lot of power-up medals to Leif and also giving him both Life Stealer and Life Cast to use Ice Ball on as many enemies as possible. It was working pretty well up until we got to the Deadlander beta fights, because in a situation where we're fighting these things, we can't do anything to knock them down. And that means our Cheaper Fidget Coffin was off limits too. But hey, we'll come back here after the final boss maybe. Though in a strange bit of foreshadowing, I actually was having problems with the Deadlander ambush in the Deadlands too. I owe this entirely to the fact that the Deadlander beta has an area of effect attack, and those are always very scary to be hit by. On my 3rd attempt I just had enough and I went to have V just smash them all into bits. And even then I was playing so sloppily I only barely managed to win that fight too. But who cares, we are finally about to fight the final boss and then Fire Constructs afterwards. The latter not really being very notable at all. I took out the Claw first because it is an AoE attack and I just don't want to have to bother with that. Then the Warden because Maki's attacking the Crawler anyway, and the fight as a whole was just really simple and easy. Now, I think it's time for the moment you've all been waiting for. Let's go toe-to-toe with the final boss himself, the Wasp King. Part 1, I had a very bad start. Never mind the fact that I did 41 damage in a single turn, Kabbu took 10 damage from Hulk's Slayer. In that moment, I thought, oh shoot, I am probably screwed, and I may actually lose this first attempt. And then I proceed to super block the attack twice when he uses it on V. A couple more Hurricane Tosses later, and I guess that was fine after all. So how about that final boss, the Everlasting King, Part 2. Leif is so me right now. But yeah, I fought this boss like I fought every other boss up to this point. We rush him. Chompy takes care of the artifacts when they're on the ground. Kabbu taunts, Leif statuses and relays his charge to V. And V just hammers the Everlasting King with her Tornado Toss and Hurricane Toss. I brought some items also to poison her because she has weak stomach and also just because I want to be able to use Poison Cake for once in my life. And this strategy was only interrupted at one point, and that's where the Everlasting King used his area of effect attack, the Pyro Spiral. But hey, I came prepared, so I have Miracle Shakes. Then all we were doing left was trying to find our footing again, and once we did, well, the fight was pretty much over. However, just because we beat the final boss does not mean we finished the challenge yet. After all, I still have to fight the 2 super bosses, Team Maki and Team Slacker. And for 2 reasons. 1, I don't like to leave stuff unattended in my challenge runs, and 2, I don't want to have to do TUFFBUGS ever again. So I got any items that will be helpful towards the Cave of Trials, went in to try doing it again, and this time I made it to round 50 and I actually won. Which means it's time for Tangy Bug. 5 defense, 114 HP, and a lot upon a lot of moves. There wasn't much of a strategy aside from what I normally do in this challenge anyway. Just bash the pulp out of this boss. Near the end of the fight, I thought I was on the ropes because I missed the frostboning action command, but thanks to Pep Talk and V's needle attacks, we were able to recover. Honestly, I cannot do this fight justice. I am probably gonna make a highlight video out of this fight alone. Just note that my first time getting to this boss, I managed to win. Now Team Maki gets special treatment on hardest mode. Not only do they get the 15% extra HP, but they also gain +2 attack and +2 defense. Basically, the only way you're ever gonna win this fight is if you cheese them. Look at Maki's defense. That's 5 points. I don't even think Iron Nails can reach that high. So anyway, I started blasting. Most of what I did were just using V's needle moves. Combined with status elements, they're actually pretty lethal weapons. And I already have a whole solo run dedicated to V to demonstrate that. I also decided to have V knock herself down to low HP using Heavy Throw. After all, Kabbu has to keep using Taunt, and I don't really trust Maki or Hina not to knock V out if they had the chance. The rest of the fight goes just about how you'd expect it to. We killed Maki first, Yin second, and lastly Hina. And that just leaves one more boss fight to handle, Team Slacker. Also, I just have to say it, congratulations on making it a whole half hour into this video. Seriously, all of you who made it this far, you're freaking awesome. Thank you for validating my drive to create content for you to watch. Now, much like with Team Maki, I did opt to use a lot of numbing and sleeping status elements on them both. However, to start off in this fight, I was being more passive because I did not want Stratos to get too much resistance, and then had Delilah heal him with using Queen Snitters herself. Take my word for it, that is such a chore to fight through. So I use Heavy Throw to lower Stratos' HP and defense first, and then I start spamming Hurricane Toss. It was only once his HP fell low enough I started using the needle attacks. And the turn I KO'd Stratos, I numbed Delilah, and she never got to attack me ever again. What follows then is a flurry of needle tosses and needle pincers with Delilah completely helpless to stop it. And she too fell to her knees and was forced to acknowledge her queen. On this channel, we bust myths in Bug Fables. We make lists and tier lists in Bug Fables. We do lots of challenges in Bug Fables. But most importantly, we enjoy Bug Fables. And Paper Mario, but most people don't care about that. If you're in any way, shape, or form interested in Bug Fables, you know what to do. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching.